Hey, I'm Nick with Ultimate QM, and today we're going to be going over squaring an X-Wing race car. So the tools you're going to need to square an X-Wing is two 90-degree squares and a tape measure, your ride height setup blocks, a 5/16 and 7/16 wrench. These long-handled ones with the low profile ends make it easier, but you can use any wrench if you don't have these. A 1/2-inch wrench and a 13/16 for the hubs. So first step is to install your Ultimate QM setup plates on all four corners, and then you're going to put the car on your ride height blocks at the ride height that your setup sheet specifies, and then you're going to check the left to right of the axle by putting a square on the lower frame rail on the left side and making the bird cage inner edge flush to it. So the next step after that is going to be to set the timing of the bird cages. To check timing on the left rear, you're going to set the square against the back side of the rear track bar mount. And then over on the right side, you're going to check it against the brackets to mount the caliper on the bird cage. So if you need to make an adjustment, to do so you're going to loosen the jam nuts on both of the radius rods, and if you need to, say, roll it forward, you're going to shorten the top rod and lengthen the bottom rod, or vice versa to roll it back. And we want the square to sit flat on the table and flush against both the top and bottom of this bracket. Okay, and then moving on from that, the next step is going to be to set the distance forward and back of the rear axle. To do so, you're going to put the square against the back of the rear frame rail and another one against the back of the axle, and you're going to measure from the back side of the front square to the back side of the rear square, and that measurement should be 5.5. If you need to adjust it, you're going to lengthen or shorten both the rear radius rods evenly, and then double check that your bird cage timing is still correct. And then you can come over to the right side and do the same process as the left side. It should also measure 5.5. Okay, now coming to the front of the car, the first thing you're going to want to measure before anything else is to set your front track bar length. And we measure from the bottom of the track bar mount to the center of the bolt. We don't go diagonal from bolt to bolt. It's from the bracket to the center of the bolt on the axle. If you have to adjust it, you can just lengthen or shorten this rod. And then the next step is going to be to set the toe close. When you're setting your toe, you want to make sure that the steering shaft is clocked right. So you're going to want each of the ears of the steering shaft, you want them at 11 and 1. So then you're going to use the 90-degree squares to set the toe. You can just shorten both the front steering rods to get that so it's right. And they should be flush against the rod and the plate so they sit perpendicular to each other. Okay. So after you've set the toe, you're going to set the timing of the front axle. To see if it's perpendicular, you're going to take one of the squares and set it on the table and line it up with the track bar mount. So if it's crooked, you're going to come over to the right front radius rods and you're going to lengthen and shorten them to either roll the front axle forward or back to get that track bar mount to sit perpendicular. So after that's done, you can come over and check the right front wheelbase. You just measure from the back of the rear rod to the back of the front rod. So to adjust your wheelbase to the right length, you're going to spin the right front radius rods, and you want to do it evenly. You want to spin them the exact same amount, top and bottom, so that it doesn't affect the timing of the axle. And you can come over to the left side and check the wheelbase on the left side, and if you need to adjust it, you can just spin the one radius rod, either lengthen it or shorten it. So after both wheelbases are right and the toes set, you come and check caster. To check it, you put the angle finder onto the square and then set it on top of the spindle body. If it needs to be adjusted, you can loosen the 5/16 bolts on the caster adjuster and either tip the caster adjuster forward or back. Once it's set to 0 on the left side here, I'm going to tighten down both of these bolts and make sure they don't twist. After setting caster, the next step would be to check camber. To check it, you put the angle finder flat against the setup plate right here. Now we're moving over and doing the same on the right side. And set the caster to 4. And then check the camber. We're setting it on the plate flat again. And we're going for 4 degrees also here. If it needs to be adjusted, the easiest way to do it is to take off the hub right here. It doesn't have to come all the way off, just loosen it. And then you're going to loosen up the 2 7/16 jam nuts on these set screws. And you can tighten or loosen the set screws opposite ways to either tip the wheel out or in. So if I need more camber, I can loosen the top set screw and tighten up the bottom set screw. And then once I got it set, I'm going to tighten the hub back up to check it again. So after the measurement's right, you can loosen the hub back up so you can tighten it down. The set screws do not need to be super tight, they just need to be snug. If you tighten them too much, they'll actually squeeze the spindle and it will get stiff and won't turn. The jam nuts do need to be tight because if they back out, they could potentially hit the wheel studs. So you need to make sure the 7/16 is tight, but the set screws just need to be snug in there. And then once you've got it tight, you can tighten the hub back up. And then after you've got your wheelbase and your caster and camber all set, the final thing to do is to check the toe more accurately with a tape measure. You're just going to measure from the right front plate to the left front plate on the front and back of each of them. It doesn't matter if you read the measurement on the inside or outside of the plate, just as long as you do it the same on each plate, on each side. And if you need to adjust it, you just spin the steering rods. And make sure to keep the ears on the steering shaft clocked right as you're setting the toe at 11 and 1. So that's the basic steps to squaring an X-Wing race car. We also have this in a PDF version on our website. If you ever need any extra help, you can always give us a call. We're happy to help you.